to introduce you to Sabina Jasinska. She is an international marketing leader with experience in managing global marketing and operations teams for top LSPs, including Donnelly Language Solutions, SDL, and We Localize. She is currently in charge of global marketing and sales for StoneShot, a leading marketing agency based in London, specialized in email and event marketing for financial services firms. Being a marketer and a lawyer and a linguist by education, Sabina is interested in a variety of topics where law and marketing meet, such as GDPR and ESG, and specializes in developing marketing strategies targeting highly regulated markets. Sabina, the audience is yours.
Thank you, David, for the introduction, and hello, everyone. It's fantastic to be here. I really missed Gala. Let me share my screen. Hope you can see it now. Yes, David? Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So today we are going to talk about sustainability, but there's just so much that we can cover in 20 minutes. So my goal is to focus on 3 elements: why sustainability is good for your business, why it's good for your company, and also why it's good for our industry. So I believe that this is the first time ever we speak about sustainability at a language conference, and I would say right on time, because 2020 turned out to be an epochal year for the discussion about sustainability, and I'm happy actually we're speaking about it in September and not in March, because there's so much more that we know now collectively. And when the lockdown happened, there were so many happy messages about how nature was blooming without us. Dolphins were swimming in the Canale Grande. The inhabitants of Delhi could see the Himalayas for the first time. And we could see also how the pollution was reducing, went by 44% in India. However, from the perspective of those past few months, we can see clearly that the COVID crisis has shown an incredibly harsh light on a range of sustainability challenges and exposed weaknesses and inequality in every society. And also, first of all, after years of trying to reduce plastic, we started to wrap everything in plastic again, like in the good old times. And of course, plexiglass and all the signs, this is nothing compared with the single-use masks, as well as aprons and plastic gloves, which are now accumulating in landfills, and some of it will end up in the ocean, of course. But when you look into the statistics, last year, we globally spent 800 million on those masks. This year is 166 billion. And when you think about countries like Italy, 60 million people, they use over 1 billion masks per month and 500 million gloves. So this is enormous. And of course, because the price of oil is going down and oil is needed to produce plastic, no one has even thinking about an incentive to reduce that production and that waste. But that's not all, because of course the crisis has exposed other inequalities, and here educational inequality. We know that 20% of children in primary schools in highly developed countries couldn't go to school. I mean, they didn't follow any education, but it's 86% in low development countries, so almost no one. Poverty. So with every crisis, rich get richer, poor get poorer. But actually, we already, before the crisis, we had the highest income disparity in the OECD countries in the last 30 years. But now there's 1.6 billion people sliding into poverty because they are going to lose jobs, and 400 million in India only. And another problem is, of course, digital exclusion. So there are people who cannot use internet because of different reasons, and that could be age, literacy, language disabilities, poverty, or location. And of course, digitalization offers enormous possibilities for transformation towards sustainability, but it also leads to an even higher concentration of the power in the hands of Google and Amazon and similar companies. So when we think about what is sustainability, the most common definition is that it's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. And by future generations, we actually mean 7 generations, so 180 years. And that's why it's focusing on long-term goals instead of short-term gains. And that discussion about sustainability is very much linked with another discussion, which is the reason of a corporation to exist. Because the main view that dominated in last century was Milton Friedman's argument that companies are there to only pursue profit. And he was even saying, and he was famous for it and got a Nobel Prize for economics for that, that corporate social responsibility doesn't exist because, and we shouldn't even be using this term because that's confusing, because only humans can be responsible morally for their actions. Managers are only responsible to make money for shareholders, and questions around social issues should be left to government and not to corporations. But that view is not dominant anymore, and it's actually hard to defend it today. And when we think about Steve Jobs and the Apple's mission, he was saying that Apple is there to make contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. So it's much beyond profit. And now just a few words about what sustainability is, and that will lead us later to the discussion about how we can apply it for the language industry. So it is a concept built around 3 pillars, so economic, environmental, and social. And only when those things meet, we can talk about sustainability. So when social and economic converge, we talk about business ethics and workers' rights. And when economic and environmental merge, then we can talk about pollution reduction. But sustainability is no longer about doing less harm. It is actually about doing more good. And we see with that how corporations are making billions on it, because there is green marketing, and there's a growing area of marketing, which of course sometimes can become greenwashing in case of false advertising. Many criticize it, saying that only large corporations can afford it because it is additional cost for the companies. But I can assure that it works. So I used to manage all the global activities for Donnelley Language Solutions, and our target was financial and asset management firms. One year we made a huge mistake. We were sending balloons to asset managers, to which we were getting feedback that please stop sending us plastic, this is pollution, spend that money on charitable causes. So the following year, we did an event on ESG, which is environment, social and corporate government. And we had a waiting list for the event. So it really shows that trend. And of course, whatever we look, the organic versus bad food, this is where we see all those products that are actually very successful right now and absolutely winning. So Chipotle is making 5 times more profit than Burger King because it's sourcing organic food. But there's so many other examples of that. And what's actually interesting here, I was talking about Friedman before, but I would like to quote Jack Welch, which was considered the manager of the century, the famous CEO of GE, who actually completely didn't believe in global warming, and he thought that this was a socialist attack on capitalism and a mass neurosis. But even he was saying that the world demands green products. That's why whether you believe in global warming or not, you should invest in those. So that's why, of course, how smart companies are making billions by using sustainability. But that's only this green to gold trend is in line with general evolution of societies. And I love this example, and maybe you've heard me speaking about it already, but this is one of my favorite, is that in marketing, we see an evolution from the traditional P, which is product, price, placement, promotion, to E, which is experience, exclusivity, emotion, to marketing I, involvement. And it is an evolution that we can see in societies, generations, social groups, or countries. So for example, Poland, 30 years ago, Poland, my country, was one of the poorest post-Soviet countries of the bloc. Then it became an emerging market, and now it's officially a developed country. So at the beginning, we're all about consumption, buying all the TV sets and phones that we didn't have before. But when we got all of it, so then what's next? So we started to travel and eat sushi for the first time. But when everybody already had sushi and we did bungee jumping, so what's next? And that's where involvement comes in. So joining different charitable causes, communities, and maybe even starting doing recycling. And what's interesting, there's still so much confusion. So if you are eco-friendly and vegan in Poland, you should not really eat avocado, quinoa, and drink coconut milk, because that's not eco-friendly, right? You should be eating barley, cabbage, drink carrot juice, and beetroots. So because actually most of the pollution that we see related to food distribution is because of all those people driving cars to farmers markets and to different shops instead of just buying in a local supermarket. And it's true, 20%. But apart from green marketing that sells, being sustainable is also good for your company. And this is because of 4 main reasons to go green. And the first is customers, so sales, financial, employees, as well as legal. And when we talk about customers and consumers, we see that people buy with their values. And what you see here on the screen is a survey done by Salesforce, which shows that the vast majority of people want to buy from ethical companies, prefer to pay more for ethical products, and so on. And we can all list many examples, like the one with Nestle, the major chocolate producer, who had problems because of using palm oil and depleting the habitat of orangutans and forests. So, but what's actually even more interesting in that survey is that 93% of respondents believe that companies also have a responsibility to improve the world, or even need to advocate for human rights. And in some countries, like for example in Poland or even in India, it's mandatory for companies to invest a certain % of a turnover in CSR, 2% in India actually. So second reason, it offers significant financial benefits, and we can talk about reducing expenses and waste. So if you are lean and Six Sigma, you actually save energy. And there's just so many examples, and you can read all the fun facts about sustainability. But one of them is, but that's domestic, that an energy saving washing machine saves more water in 1 year than a human drinks in a lifetime. We know that the Americans use 20% of energy worldwide, with only 5% of population, but 20% of that is used for offices, for office buildings, like heating, AC. So it's a huge, huge waste. 40% of solid waste is paper. But we know that pollution is nothing else than resources that we're not harvesting, because most of the time we're ignorant of their value. So of course, a way to stop it is to adopt circular economy and reusing, refurbishing, remanufacturing, instead of linear economy, which is take, make, and dispose. And then reason number 3, employees. And here there are, of course, many aspects that we could talk about, but I would like to focus on diversity and bias. And there was a movie about a soap dispenser, and it was actually quite famous a few years ago, that works only and gets activated if your hand is white. But if your hand is not white, it doesn't work. And because, of course, there's a bias in the system, in the AI algorithm, which interprets the word and uses some framework. But we don't want that bias to happen in the world of AI that could potentially isolate a group. And there's a major risk in creating a caste system, especially that everything that we see online is very much personalized to us, based on the information about us in real time. So if you rule those algorithms, basically you can rule all the financial situation, healthcare, even love life. So this is another example which is quite crazy. You know that on Tinder, you only see people that are in your league, according to the attractiveness score given by the system. You are not seeing anybody else. You can imagine that when you go on LinkedIn, you only see the ads that are for you, and they might be blocked if you are a woman, older, or maybe from a minority. That's not that hard to imagine. And that's why it's so important for the companies to have diverse teams, and especially diverse engineering teams, because how can you be aware of that bias if you are not from a minority or you don't represent that disabled group? And of course, and we see that already practical implications of it in London, an asset management industry. there's already a group of women trying to make ads on LinkedIn, job posting on LinkedIn less masculine, because they're saying that women are blocked from getting jobs, talented women, because of those algorithms. So that's why the number 4, of course, it's legal. And here, a huge opportunity for the language industry. And this is because there's so much regulated content that needs to be produced and adapted, translated, as from content to design. Huge opportunity for the language industry. But this is all happening because there are so many laws mushrooming because of those grand challenges that we face that are much beyond an individual, a company, or even a country, a domestic level. So one of my favorite actually is accessibility. So it's a 508 compliance in the US. Already in the 90s, it's called ADA compliance. So there's a regulation that required schools, museums, shops, theaters, and hospitals to be accessible by people in wheelchair. But now we know that the larger marketplace is online. So we need new regulations that would ensure that all those groups have a safe access to internet, and that's especially people with disabilities. And that regulation assesses people with a wide range of disabilities, from epilepsy, so they cannot see flash, or those who are colorblind, so we need a higher contrast, and so on. But that's important because nearly 20% of Americans, so around 50 million Americans, have some sort of disability. 4.6 million of Americans cannot access internet. 18 million people in the UK have some sort of disability. So if you don't, if you ignore the accessibility needs of your customers, you limit your website views, you narrow your target audience, and of course you decrease your revenue, in addition to running all the legal issues. So other abbreviations and other regulations that you see on that screen are basically for the same reason. They're all ensure that accessibility for different groups. And that could be, for example, KID and PRIPS, which is in financial industry, in insurance, making sure that what you read is written in a plain language so you can understand it, but also that it's available in different languages like MDR. So there are just many of those regulations. It's a huge opportunity, obviously, for the language industry. But now the question I would like to ask you after this first introduction, is the localization industry sustainable? So please write in the chat if you think yes or no. And I think that many people we're going to find out soon, but many people would say, yes, absolutely. We're digital first. We were working from home and from anywhere before it was even fancy. And we have this gender equality. 70% of us are women. And this is what was confirmed by CSA in their recent report in July. We're of course highly educated, flexible in the way that where we can live, career advancement is easy. We welcome all nationalities and experiences. So it is a sustainable industry. However, I believe that actually it's the opposite, and our industry is not sustainable at all. And let me start with pricing pathology, with price wars, which are destroying the market. And instead of educating the client, we often just start a conversation with a discount. And in Poland, it is a disaster. Because of those price wars, we have now the lowest rates in the EU. So even if when you are a young translator, you work 8 hours per day, you still get only a minimum wage at the end. So of course, there's a risk of cheap outsourcing, and we can think about unexperienced translators, students, not native speakers, and so on. And instead of outsourcing with Spanish in Spain, you would do it with Spanish for Latin America, even if that's not the required locale. Another huge topic is the talent drain, and that is due to different reasons, including the isolation of those young translators, the fact that there's no career progression, many different elements. But we're not the only one facing this challenge, because think about Goldman Sachs. They used to always hire the #1 student at Harvard. And now that #1 student at Harvard is going to Google, or maybe starting his or her own technology startup. Another one is consolidation, so smaller firms that are potentially going to disappear, similar to law firms, which don't have technology, low technology adoption. And last year at Gala in Munich, we're listening to Stefan Derry from the Translation Bureau from Canada, who was saying that only around 37% of translation firms in Canada use technology. So it is quite little. Limited resources. So that's especially the case of indigenous languages. And you are going to hear on Thursday from Translation Commons as well as Cherokee Nation how limited some of the resources are. And I myself, I had experience with looking for Navajo translators. Navajo is a translation required, for example, in New Mexico, or even Zulu. I remember calling an agency in South Africa and asking if the Zulu translator can use Stratos. So they were laughing at me, but that was not a problem anymore 3 days later because that person was actually kidnapped and the whole village was looking for him. Then there's generation gap. So I'm happy that we have now at the Gala conference online, because in person, often any of those conferences, you could see people who are much older, and often the young were not even invited. The gender gap. So of course, 70% of us are women, but only 50% have top managerial positions. The rest are men. Isolation, which is related to the fact that even our workflow is anonymous. So there's no conversation, brainstorming, or feedback, direct feedback between translator, editor, and the proofreader. Which must be frustrating for young translators. And the last one is the real cost of technology, because of course, we say that technology is green, but there's a question, how green really is your software? And I think I was shocked when I was reading that, and this recently even the article by Harvard Business Review, enumerating how much how much technology and how much energy the technology produces. So the problem lies here in a way how it's used and developed, but Bitcoin network uses more energy than Switzerland. It will represent 14% in the next 20 years. Training a single neural network is 5 cars in their lifetime, etc. So now I have the last part of this conversation is about Localization Sustainability Manifesto. I would like to invite you here to work together on a Localization Sustainability Manifesto, because I believe we should introduce it also in our own industry, and we should plan it around ESG framework. So the one used for the financial services, environmental, social, and corporate governance. And please add me on LinkedIn, please speak with me if you would like to participate in this project, and let's do it. So if we look at environmental, I'd like to, of course, invite you to review how you save energy and what is the smallest possible environmental footprint we could make with this application, with your software development, right? You should, for example, eliminate duplicate copies of data, compress data into smaller chunks, etc. And here, of course, some good initiatives to mention. There's this fantastic conference in Ukraine happening in a forest, organized by Intext. And this is an opportunity to take a kayak and maybe go on the beach, swim in the lake while talking about localization issues. The next one is social. So here, you are going to learn a lot in the track prepared by We Localize about transforming talent. But I think we need to collectively focus on retaining talent in the industry and changing internal workflows to include those inexperienced translators and maybe help them with mentoring. And there are just many good initiatives here. So from Gala, the Rising Star, We Localize organizes exchange between offices, of course, communities like Women in Localization, and also Translation Commons. So I don't know if you know about it, but if you are a member, you can join for free. You can be paired with a senior editor who could help you improve your style and review your work. So the final one is governance. So of course, everything that we could do to ensure fair compensation, but also open communication with clients and process visibility. And here, 3 or maybe 4 examples. Polot is an organization in Poland, grouping CEOs of Polish LSPs that was created last year to talk about standards in the industry and how to improve the standards and the quality in the Polish market. Canada, of course, the Translation Bureau, who's doing a lot to introduce courses on MT and also educate translators and improve the use of technology among the translators. Duna, it's a small agency in Poland who opened a kindergarten, a multilingual kindergarten for the parents working for the school, but as well as for others. And again, Translation Commons, so the charity that is helping with free access to leading TMS tools that you can also get when you sign up on the network, and that's sponsored by main TMS providers. So with that in mind, I would like to invite you to participate in this project, because history shows that plagues can offer tremendous opportunities to break the status quo. And I think that after COVID, the choice is ours on how we will shape the orientation of sustainable development for years to come. And it's in our industry as much as any other. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing your comments and questions and collaborating with you on the Sustainability Manifesto. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina, for your presentation. This is a very important topic on sustainability. And I really appreciate also this initiative that you have. We only have time for maybe a question, because we only have 2 minutes left. And so I do have a quick question for you. Is when we talk about the sustainability, we talk about many people, the first thing that comes to their mind is the environment. But yes, in organizations, how can I make my organization sustainable and relevant? How can I apply it to my own personal company or organization or myself?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have very short time now. I would recommend reading the book Green Six Sigma for sustainability. It actually explores the 6 stages that the company need to go through, from leadership to processes. But when we look at sustainability being based on the 3 pillars: environmental, social, as well as economic, what I would really recommend is to look first into environment. So what can you do in order to reduce waste? And even think about all the paper that we print as proofreaders and editors to check 2 copies. I mean, there's just unreasonable amount of waste that we have right now. Second thing is social. So do you really give the career progression options as well as training to your employees? How do you work with external suppliers? Do you invite them to your office? Do you create that teamwork? This is sustainability. It's really helping the team grow. And the third one is, of course, economic, and that could be meeting all those others. So which is focused on the ethics, the governance of the fact how you are going to speak with your customers, how you're going to educate them and tell them about the value, and not immediately go into the discussion about profit, because at the end it's doing all good together. So sorry for the short answer. I think we're running out of time, but I recommend to read the book Green Six Sigma for sustainability.
Sabina, thank you so much again for your presentation.